The trial of the prosecutor versus Dominic Ongwen continued from the 15th January until the 2nd of February 2018 at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. During this time, a total of 8 witnesses were called by the Office of the Prosecutor to give their testimony in relation with the Lord's Resistance Army and Dominic Ongwen. The alleged former commander of the Sinia brigade of the LRA is accused of 70 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity allegedly committed during attacks against the civilian population in Lukodi, Pajule, Odek and Abok IDP camps between October 2003 and June 2004. Since opening its case on 16 January 2017, the prosecution has called 61 witnesses. The witnesses are first questioned by the Office of the Prosecution, then by the legal representatives of victims, and finally by the defense. Mr. Ongwen is represented by a defense team led by Defense Counsel Crispus Ayana Odongo. The defense conducts its own investigations and has the right to examine prosecution witnesses. Between the 15th of January and the 2nd of February 2018, 8 witnesses were called by prosecution, including former LRA abductees and former LRA first wives. All witnesses testified about attacks at the IDP camps, pillaging, and the circumstances of their abductions into the LRA, as well as sexual and gender-based crimes and the use of child soldiers in the LRA. Some of them also testified about the impact that these abductions have had on their lives before and after leaving the bush. In its pre-trial brief, the prosecution alleges that the LRA carried out a widespread and systematic attack directed against the civilian population of northern Uganda from at least the 1st of July 2002 to the 31st of December 2005. According to the OTP, the LRA adopted a policy of attacking and abducting civilians, including those living in protected internally displaced persons camps or IDPs. Thus, during this evidentiary block, several witnesses testified about attacks at the various IDP camps that were resided in, while other witnesses, LRA soldiers, testified about the attacks that they launched on various camps. In regard to the Pajule IDP camp attack, the prosecution alleges that Dominic Ongwen, together with other co-perpetrators, contributed to the Pajule Common Plan by means which included the commission of crimes. At the time of the attack, Ongwen allegedly held a leadership role within the LRA and was a member of the Control Altar and Senior Brigade. Witness P0372, an abductee turned LRA soldier, testified about attacks at the Pajule IDP camp and the involvement of the accused during the attack.
Who led the group that went to attack the barracks?
Dominic.
And what did that group do after the fierce fighting in the barracks? Did they go somewhere else other than the barracks?
The people who went to collect food did not now go to join those in the barracks, but it was the team that went to the barracks are the ones again who came back and joined the ones who were in the camp who were taking food stuff.
Did you see Dominic Ongwen in Pajule during the attack?
I saw him as he was going to the barracks.
What about after the fighting at the barracks when that group joined those in the center? Did you see him at any time then?
At the time when people met at the center, I did not now see him.
Another witness also testified about the Pajule attacks. Witness P0250 talked about his abduction by the LRA, his life and escape from the bush, and the attacks at the Pajule IDP camp and Soroti.
Okay, therefore.
Okay. With regard to the killings in Pajule, as I stated earlier, when I was talking about it, it really upset me because the events that occurred in Pajule were very sad and tragic. But one of the things that I did see was my uncle's child. The child was killed. Secondly, I also saw my uncle's child, who was also killed on that day, on the 9th of October. The child was killed and I witnessed the death. My father was beaten. He was beaten on the chest. He was beaten, he became ill and eventually succumbed and died. As far as I'm concerned, he was killed on that same day. There were also other relatives. There are some relatives that, and other people that I do not know. People were killed, people were decapitated, their hands were taken off, their heads were decapitated. There are so many people. I cannot mention all their names. If I do, it's just going to cause me upset.
Witness P0250 also confirmed that after the death of Commander Pajule, Dominic Ongwen took control over the troops to which he belonged to. He further explained that many bad things, such as houses being burned, children being abducted, and goods being looted, happened under the control of Ongwen. At the Pajule attack, the witness said LRA soldiers looted various goods and forced the abductees to carry the pillaged goods. Those abductees would be heavily beaten or even face the threat of being killed if they refused to carry the goods, the witness added. He personally witnessed 6 persons being killed and nearly 150 persons from both genders being abducted during the attack at Pajule IDP camp. The witness said that the youngest abductee he saw was around 10 years old. When cross-examined further by the defense regarding the Pajule attack, the witness said, "It is true, like I said yesterday, when the attack started, I was not present. But when the day came, we were on the way coming. They already started the attack, and when we were moving towards Pajule. When we were about to arrive, about 2 to 3 o'clock, we were close to Pade Kelak, near the center. When we drew closer, because we were walking very fast, you walk for a short distance to cover a mile. For a short time to cover a mile, and when the attack intensified, we were already present. The prosecution further alleges in its pretrial brief that Dominic Ongwen committed the crimes together with others through his contribution to the Odek Common Plan by means which included the commission of crimes. The accused allegedly briefed and instructed his troops to attack Odek, kill and abduct civilians, pillage and attack the military barracks. Witness P0372, an abductee turned LRA soldier, recounted events that occurred during Odek attack.
Were people killed at Odek, to your knowledge?
Yes, people were killed. Soldiers were killed in the barracks.
Were only soldiers killed? Were also LRA fighters killed? Were also civilians killed?
There was a boy who was called Odoj. He was shot and he tried to run but eventually died along the way.
Is this person an LRA fighter or is it a civilian?
He was an LRA fighter. There were some civilians who also got caught in the crossfire.
What do you mean by caught in the crossfire?
They were injured. They had gun shots. Some of them were abducted, others were injured and remained behind.
Another witness, witness P0410, also abductee turned LRA soldier, testified for 2 days before the chamber. He explained that before the Odek attack in 2004, there was a big assembly whereby LRA commanders such as Vincent Oti, Dominic Ongwen, Komakech, and Okwe told the soldiers that there was going to be a big operation. At this assembly, the LRA commanders introduced themselves, which is how he knew their names. The witness gave a detailed account on the attack on Odek IDP camp.
We went to Odek when we came back from Sudan. We met on the banks of the Ashwa River. They convened an RV. There was a very big assembly. And they told us that we were going on an operation. Most groups were called to that place. So all the groups from different places met, convened in that position. The commanders told us what we were supposed to do. We went to Odek. Most of the people, the new people who came from Sudan, were the ones who went to Odek. We attacked the barracks. They told us that when we hear gunfire, that will give us strength. It will embolden us. We went to Odek and got there at around 3 in the afternoon. We went, we stopped at a place close to the camp but in the bushes. We waited until the children left school and the camp was visible. There were civilians from the camp who were on their way to their gardens. I recall that 2 of those civilians were abducted, and the 2 civilians that were abducted were asked the number of soldiers who were in the barracks. They told us, but they were not sure about the exact number of soldiers in the barracks. They waited for the children to leave school at around 5 p.m. The children were leaving school. They went back home to the camps. Then the rebels went and attacked the camp and the barracks at the same time. We went and formed a formation in the middle of the road. 1 formation went to the camp, 1 went to the barracks. But I went to the barracks. I had just come back from Sudan and I had a new gun. I was put in charge of the 12, a heavy weapon known as the 12. This was one of the weapons that they brought back from the Sudan, and it was one of the weapons they used in Odek. They told us that if you see anything, exterminate anything that you see. If anything alive, it should be exterminated. And that was what we were told at the time that we were being instructed. We went for that mission as we were instructed. But it was very difficult. It was a difficult mission because the soldiers that had initially been seen at Odek were different from the soldiers that we actually found there. Initially, we assumed that the numbers were less, but when we went for the attack, the numbers were actually higher than the ones that we assumed were there. So it was a very difficult mission, especially the attack on the barracks. It took us a long time before we actually overcame the soldiers, because some of the people who were in the camp were brought to help the people in the camp. So there was a heavy fight with the soldiers in the camp. once the soldiers were overrun, we took the things from the barracks and we went to the camp because we had defeated the soldiers. We took the soldiers' things, guns, ammunitions, uniforms, shoes, and anything that was available that was being used by the soldiers. We then went to the camp. Then civilians were abducted and things were taken, foodstuff was taken. And that was at approximately 6 p.m.
The prosecution alleges that the accused devised a plan to attack the Lukodi IDP camp, which included overrunning a military detachment, abducting, brutalizing and killing civilians, and burning and looting civilian homes. Dominic Ongwen allegedly exerted control over the Sinia brigade and the Gilva brigade sick bay forces that executed the attack on Lukodi. Before the attack, the prosecution alleges the accused selected a core group of fighters from his Sinia brigade, and he also gathered fighters from Major Olak Tulu's Gilva sick bay near the Aswa River, one day before the attack. According to the OTP, these forces were under Ongwen's command and an ad hoc basis for the duration of the Lukodi attack, and he was able to do so because he was senior to Tulu in the LRA hierarchy. Several witnesses testified about attacks in Lukodi during this evidentiary block. Witness P0410 recounted the attack in Lukodi, saying that it happened a month after the attack on Odek. He confirmed that the attack in Lukodi didn't take long because the soldiers in the barracks were caught unaware. Very few and were overrun by the LRA fighters. Some of the LRA soldiers went to the camp while others went to the barracks. The witness said that they were instructed to kill whatever they find. He said that there was shooting of civilians and soldiers as well as burning houses. The deaths in Lukodi, the witness said, were higher than Odek. The witness recounted a specific incident that occurred in Lukodi. One of the houses that I opened, I found many civilians crowded there. There were many. I felt pity for them. I closed the door. I locked it as if there was no one inside. But the person who came after me opened the same house, opened the door, and when he opened the door, he found people were inside there. He bolted and locked it with a padlock, and when he had locked it with a padlock, he set the house on fire. He stood there and waited until the people had burnt down, and then he left. Witness P0410 was also cross-examined by the defense of Dominic Ongwen regarding the Lukodi attacks.
When we attacked there, the soldiers fought back. They exchanged fire with us, but we were stronger because we had also moved with heavy weaponry compared to what they had. The soldiers then fled, and the civilians remained in their houses. Some of them, of course, ran away. That was what I saw. We exchanged fire with the soldiers. It was a fierce battle, but we defeated them and they fled. That was what I saw because I personally went to the barracks.
In its pre-trial brief, the prosecution submits that from at least July 1st, 2002 to December 31st, 2005, the LRA committed a widespread and systematic attack directed against the civilian population of northern Uganda. During this evidentiary block, several witnesses testified about being abducted into the LRA. Witness P0200 recounted how he was abducted by the LRA. The witness, overcome by emotions, needed several breaks during this testimony.
On the 24th of June 2003, I was abducted by Dominic Ongwen, and that's how I came to be in the LRA.
Similarly, witness P0410 also recounted about his own abduction. On the day of my abduction, I was returning from school. It was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. We had heard rumors that there was a bit of insecurity while at school. For that reason, the teacher said that we should stay longer in school and only send the children back home if the parents confirm. We stayed up to evening and then we were discharged from school. We were not aware that people had fled from home and went on the other side of Lukodi. We went up to a place called Loyo Ajonga. From there, we were given some luggage. I was given beans. I have a sack of beans, yellow beans, which I had carried and was moving with it. After Loyo Ajonga, some of the people who were elderly were released because the LRA said they wanted people who were younger to go with them. We were whipped before those ones who were released, and they were told to go and report home that was recruitment in the army. We were then taken to where the LRA was based at the time. Witness P0410 testified that after staying with the LRA for a while, he also abducted civilians during attacks at Odek.
Please describe how you abducted the civilians.
As far as I recall, I opened a house. When I entered the house, I cocked my gun while at the door. Then I entered. I found the 2 people were inside, and I put them at a gunpoint. So I brought them outside. That was in the camp. That is as far as I can remember now.
And I don't recall if you said how many civilians did you abduct?
2. You had 2. Do you recall what kind of people were they? Were they male or female? Were they young? Were they old?
I was already an adult, and also the other one was a child.
Apart from abductions, how were civilians being treated by the LRA at the camp?
What I observed from the camp was that the civilian property was looted from the camp, and some of the civilians were shot. That is what I saw.
Focusing your mind on the civilians that were shot, can you think of one example of this and tell us what you saw?
The things that I saw, where children were removed from their mothers, and these children were killed while they were crying.
Mr. Witness, how were they killed?
They hit them on a tree. Some were hit on a tree, while others were killed mercilessly. Others were pierced with the knives. The prosecution indicates in its pretrial brief that sexual and gender-based crimes were committed primarily in temporary military camps by Dominic Ongwen and other LRA fighters who were regularly participating in hostilities. Witness P0200 recounted sexual and gender-based crimes in the LRA, saying that there were a lot of human rights violations in the LRA, and if a girl refused to be a wife, she was killed. He also said that the accused had 5 wives, and one of them was called Akelo Sarah. When cross-examined by defense, the witness confirmed that rape occurred during the LRA attacks.
Interview with the prosecution. You mentioned several times where you witnessed women being raped by the LRA during attacks. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Do you remember if Mr. Ongwen ever intervened in these rapes that you witnessed?
In most of the camps, rape was a common happening, but I did not hear directly Dominic Ongwen instructing, but to give my opinion, the rape was being done by the soldiers, his soldiers.
Now, since you were always moving very close to Ongwen, would I be correct to assume that since you witnessed these things, he also did witness the rapes? He saw his soldiers raping these women.
As my suggestion, because the rape was taking place, and he was not far away from the place the rape was taking place.
Another witness, witness P0366, testified about her abductions in the LRA, her time in the sick bay, her return from the bush, and finally about gender-based crimes in the LRA. While in the LRA, she witnessed a girl being beaten for refusing to be a LRA wife.
Madam Witness, you said that you saw a girl being beaten for refusing to become a wife. Could you please describe for the court what exactly you saw on that day?
I saw with my own eyes that day. The girl was brought before Odomi there. They came with Oto. Oto had already mentioned that the girl did not accept him as a husband. Then they said that if she did not want to become a wife, they should first teach her a lesson so that she can accept to be a wife. She was beaten, and then she was taken back and became Oto's wife.
Do you know who decided that this girl should be the wife of Otto George?
No, I do not know who made the decision.
The prosecution alleges in its pretrial brief that Dominic Ongwen's conscription and use of child soldiers were closely linked to the fighting and done primarily to sustain the ranks of the LRA. In this regard, several witnesses testified about underage child soldiers in the LRA. Witness P0307, who was abducted by the LRA when he was 12 years old in 2002 and participated in the Pajule attack when he was 13 years old, witness P0307 also testified about his role as an escort in the LRA.
Then, Mr. Witness, in paragraph 62 of your statement, you described your tasks as an escort. And this is what you said. I started carrying his gun, his bag, preparing his bed. I would also oil his gun, fetch water for him, wash his clothes. I want to ask you to think a little bit more and tell us what other tasks you had as an escort. What else did you do for your commander?
There are no other roles that I can add. What I used to do are the things that I've mentioned down there.
Witness P0145, while responding to the defense of the accused, also testified about child soldiers in the LRA.
I do recall that I said earlier that those of us who are newly abducted, and if you're young, you just spent like 2 days or 3 days in captivity, people like that line up behind. You walk behind the people who have guns. Your role is only to shout and morale boost the fighters, and you move together with the team. But if the fighting becomes so fierce and you've been overpowered, you now, when the team starts running, you also run following those who have the guns.
Having spent about 15 years as an LRA abductee before escaping in 2005, witness P0145 also gave details about the reasons why the LRA abducted young children into their ranks. In this regard, he added that,
you know, if we go back and try to explain what the LRA does, I stated earlier that the LRA abducts young children who do not know life. They do not know, they're unworldly. When the LRA abducts these kids, it's very easy to brainwash them. They bring the kids see death. When the kids see death, killing people who have been killed, sometimes they're asked to walk over dead bodies. They do these so that the kids are afraid. They then have the belief that if I go back home, such and such a thing will happen. So if he mentions names, for example, he says, I sent such and such a person to kill people, such and such a person to attack a certain place, then I became aware that there was nothing. This was not the spirit. Kony was not possessed by the spirit. This was just something that he was doing to brainwash people, to stop people from going home. And that meant that there was nothing to stop us from going back home.
When asked why the LRA preferred to keep the younger people after abduction, witness P0372 said that the reason was because the young ones could get confused and indoctrinated and would not think about returning home. He also stated that it was easy to change the mindset of the younger people. The witness confirmed that he was taught how to use a gun when he was 8 or 9 years old. He also confirmed that there were many young people that participated in the attacks in Pajule, Odek and Abok, and that the youngest boy in the accused group was between 12 and 15 years. The witness also said that the name new abductees were given was recruits, and the name changed to soldier depending on the number of years in the bush.
How did someone change from a recruit to a soldier? Was a decision made, or did people just kind of eventually over time change how they thought of them?
That depended on how long somebody stayed in the bush. The number of years would define, and such a person would have a superior who would eventually decide for that person to become a soldier.
Witnesses were also questioned by LRV, that is the legal representative of victims. Pursuant to Article 68 of the Rome Statute, views and concerns of the victims and witnesses are presented and considered at appropriate stages of the proceedings in a manner which is not prejudicial to or inconsistent with the rights of the accused, and a fair and impartial trial. Accordingly, witnesses were questioned by the LRV about their economic, physical, and emotional well-being following the events that occurred and that changed their lives, as well as the impact these attacks had on their lives. Witness P0366 was questioned by the legal representative of victims about her life before, during and after the bush. Regarding her abductions, the witness described them as painful, and she said she was fearful for her family because she did not know what happened to them.
When I was in the bush, life was extremely difficult because life in the bush is not as easy as life at home. At the time that I was babysitting, I was mistreated. I was given heavy luggage to carry in addition to carrying the baby as well. There was hunger. I was constantly hungry. I was thirsty, dehydrated. There was a time when we trekked for about 1 week. We did not have any water. I was constantly thirsty. That time I was extremely thirsty because if there's no water, you have to find a stem or some leaves that you believe that if you chew on them, it would actually soothe your throat. If there's nothing like that, then you ask somebody. If that person has some water and the person is not as thirsty as you are, then you ask them for water. You know, people die from dehydration. I saw people dying from dehydration next to me. Sometimes you tell somebody, can you please urinate? You urinate and then you drink your own urine because if you are extremely thirsty, sometimes you don't even have urine. But if you see somebody who still has urine, you can actually ask that person for their urine and drink it because life was that hard.
During her testimony, protected witness P0366 was also questioned about the injuries she sustained while in the LRA. She explained that not only she witnessed the beating of another woman by the LRA while she was in the bush, but also that during her time with the LRA, she was beaten and raped as well. Witness P0366 said that when she escaped and reunited with her family, she was very happy but felt stigmatized by her community.
Now, how were you welcomed by your community?
The people in my area welcomed me very well, but people would talk about it. People would talk about it. People would point fingers at me. People would say, well, this person has just come back. And this made my life a little bit difficult. People used to assume that when you are in the bush, you committed atrocities. So when you come back home, you're likely to commit the same atrocities against people back home. So yeah, people used to talk about it.
Another witness, witness P0374, testified briefly about her abduction, her life in the bush, as well as her life after the bush. She testified about the impact that the death of her father and brother had on her family. When asked about her wishes for the future and her expectations of the proceedings, the witness said,
My interest is that, first of all, if I could be supported in terms of counseling so that I can have some psychological rehabilitation, that would be very good for me. Secondly, I'm also thinking if I could be taken back to school so I can engage in some training that can eventually give me some employment to be able to fend for the people I am supporting. Thirdly, I also feel if it's possible, we should be taken away from the location where we are living now, because the people in the neighborhood do not like or love our family because of the things that happened way back during the days when my father and my brother were killed. They are not living well with us. It's a very hostile environment.
Another witness, witness P0250, testified about his aims in life after returning from the bush.
First, my aim is we want to see changes in the lives of us. Actually, we do not want to see a similar thing happen again. We want to stay together, just like we are now living together. And development, that's all I want to say.
And we adjourn the hearing for today.
The trial in the case against Dominic Ongwen resumed on Monday, the 19th February 2018, with the testimony of the 62nd prosecution witness.